There is a responsibility for you as a creator to realize you're influencing children. You're influencing people who are hopeless or down on their luck, people who need some kind of encouragement. And it doesn't mean that every song you write has to be this certain template, but what it does mean is to be conscious of what you're putting out there. And if you're putting out just dark imagery and dark music and dark messaging, you're contributing to lowering the vibration in this world.
Welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna Podcast. This podcast is meant to encourage you to connect within so you can share your light with the world. And now, here's your host, Harrison Ma.
Welcome, beautiful beings, to another episode of the Cosmic Love Antenna. This is your weekly installment of your inner connection to your outer expression, where I, your host Harrison, here with the powerful, beautiful guest that I get to dance with today, set the loving intention of holding the space needed to pull back the layers, restricting health, alignment, and love. And today's highly frequency, highly attuned, highly musical episode is going to really do just that. If you've listened to the intro, you've probably already had a taste of some of the frequency we're going to get into today. And I can't wait to introduce the guest that is going to help us do that. But before I get to him and his beautiful being and soul, a quick reminder: if you're new to the show here, you're a new guest, welcome. It's nice to have you. It's nice to feel you. If you're a returning tribe member, it's always a beautiful pleasure to have your ears and your love. If you get a lot of value and insight out of this show today, remember how you can support the show is by sharing this out to friends, family members, lovers, and also going over to Apple, Spotify, leaving your feedback, your comments, your perspective on this chat here today. With that, I want to introduce the powerful Ian Morris. Ian Morris is a musician. He's a powerful frequency coach. He's a very special human being that has a lot of musical and intuitive and mystical gifts to give this world. And today we're going to get into a big part of those gifts. Those gifts have to do with music, with frequency, right? And with sharing that frequency of the soul to help people heal, right, across mind, body, and spirit. We're going to talk about what is personal frequency coaching, how frequency and music can expand your consciousness, connecting it into chakras, to guides, to gods, all the stuff that I talk about here, and much more. Ian, with all of that, welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, man. I'm excited to dive in today.
I feel it, my friend. And we were just talking, people can't see this because we're doing audio only, obviously, but you're in such a beautiful environment right now to have this chat, right? For people tuning in, Ian's in a powerful art museum in Austin, right? You're in Austin?
Austin, Texas. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's the name of the museum? I'd love to give them a shout out as we go a bit deeper.
Yeah. So the artist is Chicasso. And so he goes by Chicasso, but it's here in Austin, Texas, and it's called Flippin' Art. And so it's basically a street performer who became a street artist. And the story, I'll just make this real short, but it's such a great story. People should hear it. The guy started on the street and he started going to thrift stores and taking paintings and painting over them, flipping them, using certain images. His art started growing so much in popularity. He got his own gallery, and now he's just doing this, and he's giving back to artists and helping, veterans and artists. And it's amazing, man. It's really cool.
So beautiful. Yeah. And that is the frequency that Ian is sitting in right now. So we get the honor to hear more of Ian's soul within that space. So I love it today. Ian, let's get straight into it, because I have a lot of things I want to ask you, talk to you about today. But as always here on the show, I do want to give all the beautiful listeners out there who are new to your voice, new to your beautiful soul. I think background, the past is the past, right? We need to be in the present. But for powerful beings like you and sort of where you've come from, I think it does give context to really help understand the powerful journey that you've been on. So I'd love, Ian, how I set this up is usually there is one of our mutual friends, Mr. Polchek, has a saying called the pain teacher, right? And there is usually one or two or a couple of big pain teachers that we've all had that really indicates and has pushed us into the awakening that most of my guests, you included, have sort of moved through. So I'm wondering, Ian, as a way to sort of help people feel your soul as we go deeper here today, what is the big pain teacher in your past that has really led you to do the work that you do now in the world?
Yeah. Oh man, I think I've had multiple pain teachers. So, yeah. So, I would say the first one is I was moving through life unconscious. I had that, if you work hard, you can make anything happen kind of mentality. And the part I was missing in that was the conscious element of manifestation. And so I went through a lot of my life working really hard and not seeing the payoff, because I wasn't connecting the intellectual and the mind with the heart and the soul. And I was just kind of putting in action. I think I did a lot of work and didn't get very far, and it was very discouraging. And I think, fast forward to when I actually started falling ill, I started having a lot of issues that were not diagnosed for almost a year and a half, I guess. And I finally ultimately got diagnosed with MS and colon cancer. And when that happened, I don't think I was mentally prepared for the blow, because I think I'd already felt like, as an artist musician, you're kind of already going against the grain of the world. And then, go back to the part of living unconsciously, pushing, but not really seeing a return. And then to fall ill, it was kind of a dark night of the soul, where there was several times I wanted to give up on life. It was a very dark, depressing time. So, when that happens.
And Ian, let me jump in here, because I have a question that's bubbling up that I want to ask you around this.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, your journey, just that small little piece of it already, right, is very relatable, at least to me, right? Especially the unconscious element of it. And then we need, that's why the pain teacher is so beautiful, in my opinion, is that it at the time, it doesn't feel like it, but in retrospect, it lovingly sort of helps us awaken to the truth of reality. And I think you're probably going to getting to this, but I'd love to know, with the MS piece and this dark night of the soul, you being a musician already, what was the sort of twist and the shift to help you see that the gifts that you had already sort of started to lean into and bring into the world? I guess what I'm trying to get at is what shifted, and what was the thing that reminded you that the answer had been there the whole time?
Yeah, well, so I read a lot of books during this time. I started diving into things that were not typically part of my life. And, the first two were really Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, and The Healing Power of Sound by Dr. Mitchell Gaynor. But I think what really stuck with me is there's a book called Spontaneous Healing by Greg Braden. And in that book, he has a section where he talks about belief code 21. He gave all these belief codes in the book. And belief code 21 was the belief that the thing that brought you the damage or the pain could actually be reversed and utilized in a way to heal you. And so for me, that was definitely food. And it was also the mind. The mind was something that was causing a hindrance to me and probably people around me, to be honest, and when I started shifting my mindset, my mind became a powerful ally in creating hope. And I think that that's the polarity shift. That's what it was. It was, pain. Yeah, pain can be that polarity shift where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you flip it to create the action in the opposite direction. And I think that was just the pain threshold got so great, and the desperation and the hopelessness got so great that you're either going to die and give up, or you're going to move forward. And I think I had a lot of angels and, guardian angels, family members, friends, ancestors that kind of just came in during that time to me. And I think it was great assistance to move forward. And now I'm on this mission, and it all starts to make sense,
Yeah. I think that's the crazy part, right, Ian? I think so. First of all, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's a beautiful, when I close my eyes, usually when I do podcasts, it's early morning for me, and I hear your story and I hear other guest stories. I close my eyes and I can see images of what it represents, what your story represents to me. And I see you, but I see angel wings behind you, my friend. And I think it's, you talked about those guides coming in for you, but I think what we often forget, and I see this in you, my friend, is, and let's use the example of angels. Yes, we interact with external angels, but I think we also interact with our own angelic body, right? We all have a physical, subtle energy body, a mental, a emotional, but what we often overlook is that we have an angelic energy body. And at times of pain and a crossroads, most of us unconsciously, some of us consciously, but unconsciously, we step into that angelic body, and it gives us options. Does that resonate, Ian?
Yeah. Almost like a higher self, so to speak, right? Yes, exactly. Yeah. It definitely resonates. Yes.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Ian, thank you for that story. And I think we're going to, pieces of that will probably come up more with these questions I want to ask you. But I think let's start here and go a bit deeper into the work that you're doing now in the world with music and frequency. And let's start simple. And then I'm going to go deeper and deeper into all the mystical sides of this. But let's start with this for people that are new to using music and frequency to heal themselves. Can you explain, maybe for a beginner, for someone that's new to this, how can music/frequency help us heal?
Yeah. So I love this metaphor of our friends. You hear a lot of like business coaches and manifesting coaches will say the top 5 people you hang around are who you become, right? So you hear that a lot. And I think what's interesting about that is that's a very basic description of how frequency works, right? So the vibration that your inner circle carries is going to affect you, and you're around them more than anyone. So consistently, their vibration is rubbing off on you. And so this is a very great metaphor for like tuning forks, singing bowls, didgeridoos, gongs, these kind of sound tools that, if they're used consistently, will help your body find a realignment. If you're in a lower vibration, they're holding a bar or setting the tone or a standard for you to align with. And I think it's really important when you think about your friends, because like if I'm hanging out with someone who's negative and fearful and worried and stuck in a lower vibration, and I hang out with them for long periods of time, it starts to affect me. It either affects me in a point where I say, ooh, I don't want to hang out with them anymore, or I start becoming like them to fit in or to get along with them or whatever. So I think it's really important that be made aware, for people that may never thought about it in that way, that, we start really holding a higher standard for the food we eat, for the TV that we're taking in, for the news that we're taking in, for the friends we hang out with. This is all a representation of vibration, because everything in this perceived reality is either light or sound, a vibration of some sort. And so I think like when you start thinking like that, then it goes even deeper. You say the thoughts you're thinking are carrying a vibration, and they're changing your body, based off of that. And so I think that's just like a really basic description of how frequency music and therapy works with people.
Yeah, I love it, Ian. And it to me, it highlights something that's happening in the world as a collective at the moment. And maybe you agree with this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But it is, I think, as a collective group consciousness, we are shifting our understanding from energy to frequency. And what I mean by that is, I think for a lot of us, for a long time, we've understood, maybe unconsciously, but most of us consciously, that everything is energy. But I think what we are now getting to is a more specialized, nuanced understanding of that, is that not only is everything energy, but everything that is energy also has a unique frequency, right? So for example, I'm energy, you're energy, but my soul has a unique frequency and your soul has a unique frequency. And that is exactly the same for everything we interact with. So I think there's a collective understanding and a shifting happening where we're moving from the age of energy into the age of frequency. Would you,
Yes.
Do you agree with that, my friend?
Yeah. I mean, even more so than on the personal level, you're starting to see foods are becoming infused with frequency. People are starting to look at frequency in business and in the mainstream, and it's starting to really transition over where people, I believe, there's a medical facility in the Cleveland Clinic in the United States where they're actually doing work on inoperable brain tumors with a frequency machine now. They're actually penetrating and destroying inoperable tumors with frequency. And it's this really is going to be the future where people start becoming more conscious of the music they're making. You're already starting to see the shift where people are kind of resisting against the vaccinations, where they're saying, hey, the data is not here. It's not translating for what you're saying, and people are starting to stand up and question other medical practices, and they're starting to say, hey, maybe you don't have my best interests in mind. Maybe it's about money and greed, and it's not about healthcare and taking care of the people. And so you're seeing the organic revolution, the regenerative farming revolution. There's everything is starting to move in that direction where people are starting, the shift is starting to happen.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited.
I think the
you're a
future
part
is
of that,
frequency.
Ian. You're a part of that, Ian.
Oh,
That I see, and I'm very, I am honored, my friend, that I get to have a chat with you today because I see you as a big pivotal piece of that. Let's go deeper here. So
okay.
I want to ask to that. I think even what you just described, and even though there are pieces of that that were sort of nuanced, even that was high level. Let's go even more specialized here, because I know that you, through the personal frequency coaching that you do, right? You create, music tracks, right? And I'm going to put this in the show notes. I'm also, if you've listened to this episode, I'm going to put a piece of Ian's music at the start. You'll get an idea. Ian makes personalized frequency to help people heal. So I'm wondering, my friend, what does that look like? If someone comes to you and is moving through something, let's say childhood trauma, because that's a big theme of my podcast. People move through trauma from their past. What would it look like for you to connect into making a personalized frequency through music to help them heal?
So it starts off with an hour Zoom call, right? So we get on a Zoom call and we figure out through some just talk therapy what the issue is, what we're working on to target. They will fill out some paperwork initially to kind of give us that idea, but we're going to talk a little bit about the kind of music they like, what their lifestyle is, what they're kind of facing, and what they're really wanting to target. And through that, we're going to create custom music, especially for them. So it's custom crafted binaural beats. And the reason that I think that custom binaural beats are so important is because each person is different. Some people have PTSDs or traumas that they're a little more sensitive to sound or, just in general than the average person. And so that's going to require a little more subtlety and a little more finesse and gentleness in that, exchange. But then you have people who've been using binaural beats for long periods of time, and they say, oh, they used to work in the beginning, but now they're not working. And the reason that is because people evolve, so people, as they grow deeper in that practice, change. They're going to need a little more. That's right. They need a little more amplitude. We need to focus on some other different styles of music that are incorporated with the binaural beats. And then also just the way it's stereo panned and mixed. It's a whole process. And I feel like you can really fine tune and work with a person on that personal level with those custom tracks that really gets to the heart of the issue. And, I've worked with some really amazing people, that have reversed and, people that were going to have surgery that didn't have to have surgery, people that were, had cancer and now they're cancer free. I've had people that had worked with some autoimmune issues, and some people that were working with depression and, anxiety. And so these are things that became really valuable tools for them in that journey. And it's just really humbling to be a part of that, but it's just such a personal process and fine tune, that whole thing.
As you're talking again, getting images, my friend. And it's, I see it like a sort of like you would go to a nutritionist and you get a diet plan, or you go to a personal trainer and you get a movement plan. This is a personal frequency and musical plan that you can attune to your specific challenge. And it's interesting that you said, it changes, right? It adapts. And I think this is probably, even if you're new to this type of frequency conversation that we're having, I think every single person with their relationship to their taste of music, they can see that, right? That they change over time. And what I would add to this is, I think a big part of that is our healing, right? The reason our music taste changes and adapts is, I think we heal, right? You go back to that hypersensitivity, the example that you gave around having a traumatic event, PTSD, childhood trauma, sexual abuse, etc., right? If we heal that hypersensitivity, then of course we're going to now be able to take in more of that deeper, maybe higher sort of a tempo or sporadic kind of sounds, and then move from there, right? So
Yes.
yeah, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, a lot of times, if you think about it in volume or amplitude, like if someone's listening to a track and it's like a very low level and you can still hear the melody and you're like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And then you're like, oh, you like that? And they turn it up and it's got more bass and more power, more amplitude. Then you start really feeling it. And you're really vibing with that song. And so it's very similar to that. Sometimes as you're evolving, you want to go a little louder. You want to have a little more power. And also some of those binaural beats now are moved to more the front of the mix where you can really feel it. Most binaural beats I'm working with are working in the theta pattern. And the reason is I believe it's one of the most healing states, brainwave states that we have. And, obviously it depends on the focus. But the reason why I love this is because if you're working with a client who has these pre-programmed, beliefs and stagnant energy, the way that you're going to do that is you're going to break those up. I call frequency the great disruptor, right? So it disrupts these belief patterns. And then what we're doing now is in the theta wave, when we're setting that up, it's one of the most highly programmable states of mind, where you're like, this is a great brainwave state to work with meditation, learning a new language, learning new skill sets, and so if you're working with a coach, like a hypnotherapist, a life coach, someone like that, they're really wanting to give you these new intentions, these new mantras, and declarative statements, like, I am healing now, right? And so, so now when you're in this brainwave state and you're declaring this in real time with this, you're setting your brain up to hold this information and reprogram, create new neural networks. And just it's a whole process, man. It's a journey, right?
Yeah.
So,
It's beautiful. And I actually had that experience. This leads into my next question beautifully here. I had that experience yesterday, as I was telling you before we started recording. I was writing up, show notes and a flow for this chat today. Yesterday, I was listening to your music, and I didn't just feel, that theta state that you were talking about, but I also felt my heart opening. Right, I felt my heart space starting to expand, and the fans of the show, how important this is if you've listened to at least a couple episodes. But just for new people tuning in, how are we often stuck? Whether it's through our life path, our trauma, our pain. A big part of that stuckness is we're in our heads, right? We're in those belief systems that Ian was talking about, those thoughts that we keep thinking. And one way to start to move from that is actually to drop down into the heart. So maybe you could speak to this, Ian. How have you noticed, one, that heart opening sort of appear in this kind of work? And two, how have you seen it shift people's life path, right? The things that they're deciding to do and step into?
Yeah. So, so for me, I think I don't know how to live other than open heart, and it's if the listeners and you are in that same alignment, I think most of us can say it's a painful life sometimes because you live so open-heartedly, and sometimes that's taken advantage of, sometimes that's overlooked or taken for granted, sometimes it's just not received in the same way that we would like, but I don't think I could ever stop living this way. And so for me, intentionality is such a huge part of what I'm doing with the music. So, with our affiliate program, the monthly music that we put out is exclusive to that program, but we're making that music in alignment with the astrology for the month. And when we're doing that, we're looking at all the energies that are coming in, and we want to accentuate the playful energies and to kind of alleviate some of those heavier energies that are coming in. So we try to kind of create a counterbalance through the frequencies for the collective. And so that's an intentionality that's very deep. And like with my music, I really am just come at it open-hearted. And I know everyone's not going to like every single track that I create, but I really try to create a diversity, that there's something for everyone, different styles and different genres of music, but all frequency based. And so for me, that's been a huge part of creating this business. But with people who are focused on listening and then having the experience with it, I think the open-heartedness is coming from that exchange. Like when someone makes a song for entertainment value, they're going for what's popular, what kind of template has been successful before. And so people are kind of relating to the same type of energy. But when a unique person comes and does like a different rhythm that doesn't sound normal, or a person like Bob Dylan has a very weird voice and, and it's just very unique. I think it's something like it touches people. Yeah, exactly. And I think that intentionality of heart comes through a lot of those artists, and I try to do that with my music. And I think when it translates over to the listener and they get, we've had people at some of our events just start crying. We've had people start laughing, busting out in laughter. We've had people start seeing visions or go into like a dreamlike state. And it's just really interesting how everyone's affected differently, but that there's usually some type of release or opening of some sort with it. And I think it's really powerful.
I hear that, Ian, and I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense, right? Because a big part of this frequency work, and I'm sure you know this, but just for people listening, it is breaking through those layers, right? I often give the definition of trauma as, I quote Mr. Gabor Mate, and he references trauma as disconnection. And disconnection from what? Disconnection from ourself, disconnection from our inner space of power and potential and love. And when you use frequency like this, and I experienced this yesterday too, when I was listening to your music, it lovingly pushes back against that disconnection, right? It invites you to reconnect back to yourself. And in that reconnection, of course, there's going to be release, because there's probably been things internally that you've been pushing down for such a long time that now, through the space that has been created through your beautiful frequency, it now has the opportunity to flow, right? Whether that be through crying, whether that be through yelling, whether that be through movement, right? So I love it, my friend. I'm also happy that you brought up astrology, because as you were saying that, I think your music is a beautiful remedy for all the spiritual people out there, myself included, that often get taken away by astrological events, right? We get hit by the full moon, or we get hit by, the retrograde that's happening of the month. And your music is a sort of a light in the darkness that can help us through that transition. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I'm always laughing at myself because I'm a Leo. And so people are like, this is coming in, it's going to be hot. I'm like, I'm a Leo. We made the charts, it's like that whole like, powerhouse to deal with. But it's funny because I laugh at myself, because there's times where I'm experiencing something in the month and I'll look at the astrology just to touch base, and I'm like, oh, there we go, that's what's going on, right? So I think it's neat. It's a neat thing to kind of touch base with, but I try really hard to not let it like rule my life. But it is funny to use it as a guideline, like it's kind of like to be aware of things, and then also to be conscious of those things within myself, and also sometimes it's having patience with other people in a larger way than normal, or even just kind of, I think one of the coolest things with like Western astrology and Vedic astrology is once you merge those with like the Enneagram, you're kind of merging into like human design, getting into like human design at that
and
point.
Gene keys,
and I think
gene keys too,
and gene keys. Yeah, all of these I think are huge tools, and like for me, I'm starting to use it with the people that are working with me to relate on a more personal level, and to kind of figure out where they're going to be best suited for their skill sets and their personality types. And I think business in the future is going to be doing a lot of this, like really looking at how to utilize their employees in a more powerful way. And so all of this to me is just, it's vital. And I think that it's fun to laugh at it and not take it too seriously, but I think it's an amazing tool for having guidelines and kind of a template of like moving forward. So
yeah, I think, Ian, I think you're very modest, but I can also see your work that you're doing fitting into those sort of paradigms, right? The gene keys or the human design, right? I we'll probably talk about this later with the work that you're doing with companies, right? But I can see it fitting into that, right? So it's funny that you said you're doing the gene keys to clients, and that's come up for me this week too, and I'm really excited about it. And I just see that this music topic and this music theme is another box that we can help people. Ideally, right, the goal is to just appreciate their uniqueness, because that's what it is, right? If we take away all the labels, whether it's gene keys, whether it's your frequency music, it's helping us remember our unique expression so we can adjust to that. Ian, let's jump here to another question I have for you, and you brought it up before, and I want to hear you speak about it because I think it's valuable for everyone to hear, is the difference between the specialized frequency kind of music that you create and what we hear on the radio. And I'm gonna preface this by saying, me listening to your music yesterday was actually the first time I've tuned into music for a while because of this reason. Because I cannot listen to mainstream music, and this is not taking any love away from all the beautiful professionals and people living their bliss, but just the overall themes that are apparent in mainstream music. For me and my soul, I find it very hard to release into. So I'm wondering if you could, I know you probably have an understanding of this more than me. Am I alone in this, or have you noticed this in other people too?
Yes, this has been brought up several times from several people over the years to me. But I think this Listening to Smile company and the licensing opportunities with like holistic practitioners and businesses is because I would approach a yoga studio and I would tell them, have you ever noticed that some of the music that you're playing in yoga class meant to move stagnant energy in the body and to connect with God? I mean, basically. And so in that practice, you're using pop and top 40 songs that are talking, about broken love, heartache, and also partying, drinking, doing these kinds of things. And so I said, what if you could have some upbeat music that had a higher vibration frequency wise, that was instrumental, that really gave the focus and attention to your instruction. It put the energy in the class like you want it, but you're able to now sell. When someone says, hey, I really like the music today, now you can sell this music to your client, and also portion of the sale is going to the studio. So it's a way that it protects them in copyright law, because here's the thing too, man. Most people in holistic community are using Spotify and all these other services that are streaming, and it's actually breaking copyright law. So we were working with a studio in Pittsburgh that had 6 yoga studios, and they were getting sued for like 150 grand from BMI, one of the performing rights organizations. They had 50 teachers that were using the Spotify, and they didn't have the licensing. Yeah, they didn't have the licensing to use it. So what we do is we lovingly approach people and say, what if there was a different way that you could actually have high vibrational music that's about 95% instrumental, that you could use in your yoga videos for social media, you could use it in class with people, you could use it on one-on-one sessions, and you could also resell the music to your clients and make extra money. And on top of that, you could also make customized product with your voice on it and sell it to your clients, through this program. And so it's just creating a new paradigm where the artists and musicians are being represented in the exchange of, monetary funds. And then we're creating more revenue streams and more places that they can utilize the music in their practice. And so it's just something where it's adding a high vibration and it's giving them what they want, mostly instrumental music. And the other thing about mainstream music is the tuning.
Yeah, that's the big piece, Ian. So let me just jump in here because I think I just want to honor you for that. I love the structure. So and I want to come back to that later, and maybe you can speak more about opportunities for people to get in touch with you, because I think it's a beautiful framework. But let's go deeper into the tempo piece, because that's what I've noticed you talked about the instrumental, and the example that you gave of a yoga class, right? What are we doing in a yoga class? The intention in many ways, and I was having this conversation yesterday, is to strengthen the physical body, open the physical body so we can connect to the divine, right? And so if there is a tempo and an intention and a thing playing in the background that is constantly fighting that openness, that frequency rising, then of course it's going to be challenging. Of course, people are going to leave that class wondering, why didn't I have that connection? Well, we're not thinking about that music in the background that's bringing the frequency down. So
yes,
yeah, speak to the tempo side that you were just getting to.
Yeah, so standard tune music is in A equals 440. So the stuff at Listening to Smile, majority of our catalog is in A equals 444, which is where the solfeggio scale and tuning is. And a lot of that is tied to like the Gregorian chants and a lot of the healing ancient practices. And then you have 432, A equals 432, which was, standard tune and concert pitch at one time. And then it was shifted. Now, this is a little conspiracy, stuff, but basically there's a lot of evidence that points to the research and developments of scientists in Nazi Germany during World War II that were really studying music. And they were really, what ultimately they were studying was mind control. They were trying to learn how to make a docile set of people to follow. And when you look back at how quickly the Nazi Party rose to power, it was very quick. And it was I don't think we've ever seen something rise that quickly in history. And so when you look at the scientists and the research that was behind that, they were putting fluoride in the water. They were looking at frequency, changing the frequency in schools and just general pushing that out. And then you have the Rockefeller Foundation and the Ford Foundation in the United States looking at how quickly they rose to power. And they were saying in a real way, hey, we want to create a set of doers, people that are working the assembly lines. We don't want uniqueness. We don't want people to, we want them to do the same routine day in, day out, not question anything and just be assembly line workers. So they were starting to push changing the tuning of music and then pushing it into the schools. They were pushing to get fluoridation in the water. There was just a lot of mimicking that went on.
It makes sense, Ian. I've heard you. This is why I wanted you to share this, because it, and I don't want to go into all these pieces here because there's many other questions I want to ask you about. But I just want to support this by saying that, you look at the other pillars that you outlined, right? Whether it's the water, whether it's the education system, whether it's now the TV and the media that we have, right? Television, right? Just watching the news, you can feel the resonance shift in it, right? Of course, that music, the other space and place we're spending a lot of our time, most of us, also has this influence, right? So I'd encourage, go.
Now, I was just going to say, I think you have to really look at how powerful mantras are, right?
Yeah.
So you're repeating a phrase over and over and over, and what you're doing is really beating your mind. You're beating your mind into submission so that the subconscious will take on this. So, and what I mean by that is, I had someone say to me one time, they startled me awake. And they said, you were so nice when you woke up. You weren't like, rah, and she was basically like saying like, hey, you're a very calm person. And it's like, even like at the snap, it's like your default is to be calm, right? Is to be calm. And so that's a programming of the subconscious for you to react in muscle memory in that way. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is to say, that's the purpose of mantras. Whenever something happens to you that's stimulating you or, aggressively coming at you, when you get squeezed, it's orange juice that comes out. It's not rage and anger and all of that. So my point is that mantras are a really great example of how repetition can really condition the mind. So you look at music is so repetitive and it's got the same hooks in it that they're really wanting to influence. And so this for me is really big because I'm connecting to artists and poets and musicians, and I'm telling them like, there is a responsibility for you as a creator to realize you're influencing children. You're influencing people who are hopeless or down on their luck, people who need some kind of encouragement. And it doesn't mean that every song you write has to be this certain template, but what it does mean is to be conscious of what you're putting out there. And if you're putting out just dark imagery and dark music and dark messaging, you're contributing to lowering the vibration in this world, And so I think as creators, there's just a responsibility that goes in that, but it's also taking responsibility for looking at these tools that are now available and becoming more aware, worldwide, where there's a new opportunity to change the tuning of your music or to change the themes of your art or poetry to really uplift people and support people in a time that I think we need it.
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful, my friend. And I think the mantra example really highlights it wonderfully. And I will add another piece to it is the mantra is not only with that intention that you were talking about, but I think you're probably aware of this through the Vedic perspective. A mantra also is like yoga is a pathway back to the divine, right? Is a pathway back to the channel and what we are. So much like you're beautifully highlighting, of course, it's going to be very challenging if that mantra is, not of an intention that's going to highlight that, right? Not of an intention that is more sporadic and disharmonized. And to jump to the defense of any musician that's listening that may be producing this kind of music. I think this is an example of it's not you, it's the system, right? It's not you, it's the structure and the foundation that's been laid for us to walk into from birth that creates a specific kind of person. And now it's our role as the individual to awaken to our power and truth and realize, oh, there's another way to do this, right? And Ian, you're showing a beautiful example of what that other way is. I want to shift now, Ian, to let's go deeper here. and I want to what I want to talk about is this deeper mystical spiritual side of this. And let's use that example of using your music as a gateway into our divine. I've noticed that in ceremonies where I've been listening to, let's use being in a plant medicine ceremony, for example, using the ikarus, which are the people that come in and sing music that help you through the experience. In that experience, I've noticed that not only has this awakened deeper parts of my mystical being, but this has invited in or allowed the opportunity for other entities to come in, other guides, angels, ancestors, spirit animals, whatever you've connected to. So I want to get your opinion on this, Ian. Have you noticed through this kind of frequency music work that you do, have you noticed that it has been a gateway or a door to interactions with loving entities, guides, angels, etc.?
Yeah. So it's interesting, man. I think there's people who are aware, sensitive, and intuitive and empathic that feel what you felt and have had experiences like that. I think a majority of the people do not have those experiences. They're not open in that way. They haven't opened to that fact. But I will tell you that I was talking to a shaman one time that was from New Mexico, and she was telling me, she said, when you hold these groups with people, she said, she came to me and she said, your music is very powerful. You've done this before in other lifetimes. And I said, oh, I was like, okay. And so, she was sharing this with me, and she said, when you share this music with groups in person, and I said, yeah, she said, do you go under in meditation with them, or do you watch over the group? And I said, I watch over the group. And she said, why? And I said, just to make sure that everyone's okay, that, people are having good experiences, and just kind of watching over them. And she said, like a shepherd.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, maybe. And so she starts, going deeper in it. And she said that when you're playing frequency this intentional and this direct, like with the tones, instead of just being the melody and like an entertainment form of music, but she was talking about like shamanic drums, boom, 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 boom. And she said you get a consistency in the tone or the rhythm that it's rippling out beyond what our eyes can see. And so she says it starts drawing attention to this area, and that entities are coming in saying, so one of the things is this stuck with me, and it made me realize that I wanted to protect people I was working with in a spiritual manner. And so before any time I host a group, I'll cleanse the room or the space that we're working in, and then I'll walk around it with frequency playing, and I'll say, God is the only power working here. So it's basically saying love is the only frequency we're holding here, and we're accepting nothing else at this. And it's like putting up a spiritual barrier for this space. Yes, exactly. And just giving a space of healing and release work. And then after the spaces are done, there's a lot of energy that's there, from that group. And so we cleanse the space for the people who are coming next to kind of exit out any kind of release work that was done, any kind of, energetic, stagnant energy that was moved. We want to just clear it out of the space so that the next people coming in have a space of baseline clear. And so, yeah, I mean, and I also believe on the other side of that, there are, great beings who have sat with us. There was one time I was doing a meditation when I was first getting started, a sonic meditation, and it was 12 women that showed up to this event. So I was hosting it, but it was 12 women, and they all decided, normally people are sitting in these events like in a square almost, and they're doing lines and rows to fit as many people into a square room as you can. But because there was only 12 at this beginning one that I did, they all decided amongst themselves to sit in a circle. And man, the 12 women, the council, that was formed at this event was so powerful. And in the middle of the event, I was sitting there, just kind of watching over the group, and this huge face just stuck his head down through the ceiling, and I could see him looking over these women. And I think it drew a lot of attention. It was very angelic. It was almost like a giant angel. His face came down and was just staring at the women. And there was a very powerful night where a lot of the women cried. There was a lot of release, and there was a bond that was formed between these women that was just very strong. And I think they went on to do some things in like 2 or 3 different groups, like split apart and did things in the community with like yoga and meditation and breath work and in that town. And so it was just really powerful. So there's definitely like a lot. Angelic. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, Ian. So thank you so much. I'm so happy you shared those examples. So, this is just opening up a whole other can of worms here. Just remind me, because I want to come back to your past life piece, because I want to ask you a question about that. But I don't know, you probably don't know this about me, Ian, but a lot of the work that I do on this show and with my coaching is in this world, right? Is in, helping people connect to their loving entities, their guides, their angels, right? It's part of the work. And it could not make more sense with what you're saying, right? Because one of the ways I'll maybe tie this in for people listening that maybe are hearing this and like, oh, this is, a lot of my listeners are attuned to all this, but even if you're still listening and this is a bit far out there for you, the one thing I would say to validate it is the chakra system, our energetic chakra system. And I know a lot of your work, my friend, the frequency that we've been talking about, that's one of the frameworks that connects to us, right? Is through the different energy centers. And that is why the heart opens with a specific solfeggio tone versus another, right? Just that. But that system doesn't disappear when we die, when we transition, right? Whether you are in, a guide form and an ascended master form, angels are different. But what I'm saying here is that all of these loving entities, they have a similar system to us. So if you are playing a frequency of the heart for all of the physical people in the room, and they're being expanded by it and attracted to it and connecting to it, then of course that's also going to apply to the non-physical. That's going to apply to all the other entities that also have that same heart chakra that want that same kind of healing, right? So
yes.
That's just one side of it. But Ian, I'm actually interested because you're piquing my intuitive senses here. The past life element. Have you looked into that? When that person said that to you, did you start opening your heart to that idea that you've lived lifetimes where this is not the first time around where you're doing this kind of work?
Oh man, we are opening a can here now. So I actually met a woman from being on Paul Chek's podcast.
Yeah.
And we connected at the beginning of this year. Well, so it's much deeper, man, much more intimate. So
who is the lady, out of interest, if you don't mind sharing?
Her name's Brittany. And so Brittany is a powerful, she channels light language, very, very powerful. Yeah, very powerful. And we met at the beginning of the year, and we were just kind of on a business, interaction, and we became friends over the year. And here recently we started dating, and in that dating there was this massive healing that I had never experienced, and I think she would say the same thing. It was basically, we had a Vedic chart astrology reading, and I think we had 32 out of 36 or 34 points on the chart that matched, just a very, very powerful match. And the reader was saying that she'd only seen this like 2 times before. She'd been doing this for like 15 years. And she said it was a very powerful match. Now, the reason why I'm getting into all that is to basically say this friendship, much less the partnership that is being formed, but this friendship that is taking place there, all of these things that come up where there's actually visions, there's actually images and visions that have been unpacked, and I saw about 3 of my past lives, and it was just very, very powerful stuff, And so, so I know that I have worked with sound before. I know that some of the visions that I had that were just so almost like a memory recall, it was just like a sporadic image. That came forth, tears. It was just such a connection that was such recognition of a resonance that was like, okay, I get that, and that was me. And so the power
Ian,
that
can I jump in here?
Please.
I'd love to give you what I'm getting from this, and as my throat chakra blocks up here. This is interesting. So I want to. One, I just want to highlight the importance of that soul contract that you had with this lady, right? And you're not alone. You're not alone in that, right? And I think that's just for people listening. It is often other people that help us awaken back to more of our truth, right? Through a very specific soul contract that we have, right? So I want to, what Ian's describing with this beautiful woman and this lady that's come into his life, right? It shows us that, yes, we are powerful spiritual beings that have our own journey to walk, but along that path, along that journey, we run into other people that can help us see more of ourselves, right? So I just want people to see that, the importance of it. But for you, my friend, I'd love to offer a piece of advice around these past lives that are coming back and the recognition that you're having. I would, and you're maybe already doing this, but I would encourage you, if you are, to lean in more. You know, look at what the tears came up around, right? So for example, if the tears came up around, if it was just a recognition, beautiful. But if there was some pain there, right? Pain works the same, whether it's in this lifetime, and we talked about at the start of your journey, right? Or if it's in a past lifetime. And what I mean by that is we often get lost in the resistance and the tension and the heaviness of the pain, and we don't allow ourselves to see the gift behind it. So I'm wondering, Ian, one, if this resonates, and two, through that release that you had with the past life recognitions, have you seen it impact your gifts more? Have you stepped into more of the gifts based off what it brought you?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. So some of what you're saying has happened. So one of the lives, I was a Roman soldier, and I had some imagery of like actually doing battle and like being in battle with people, taking people's lives, and it was very painful to have that resonance come forward. And I think what's interesting is there was a vision where I was stabbed in the heart with a spear, and I died. And in this lifetime, which is really interesting, is I was born with a heart defect. That's something that is not fatal, but it corrects itself most of the time over time. But it's a mitral valve prolapse. It's a valve problem, where it's like buckling in. And so it's interesting to think about, in this lifetime, if we have something that's left unaddressed emotionally, it turns into a physical manifestation. So, what's really interesting to me is like, we're getting into a whole nother subject here for me, like past lives and reincarnation, meaning like a lot of people will ask me what I feel about the transgender movement. And I'll say, well, can you imagine if reincarnation is real and you've lived many, many lifetimes as a woman or as a man, and you resonate with that energy more and you come into this life? And there's been times where I look at my body and I say to myself, like, this is not the body that I resonate with, not as in a gender, as in a male or female, but just in a body. This does not feel like me, but it gives me this interesting interaction with the world. And it's like giving me a different experience than what I think I'm used to. And so
I think
the whole thing is fascinating to me.
It really is. And I'd encourage you, when you get time, definitely go listen to a couple of my other episodes, because I talk a lot about these themes and these subjects. And I want to make another connection with you with the heart valve and the being stabbed in the past life. Again, I also want to look at your pull to this music that you're doing and how it helps people heal their hearts.
Exactly.
Right. You've had that, right? Yes. You've had that
Yeah.
unconscious pull until you now are consciously aware of it. But up until now, you've been having this pull to work with this frequency to help people come back to their hearts. Right. So it's beautiful, my friend. Thank you for sharing that. We're getting close to the time here, my friend. And I want to get in a little bit more with you. I think what we're going to do now is, I know you have a beautiful poem that you want to share with us, but before we get to that, and I have another question I want to ask you before we wrap it up. I want to give you the bit of space to share, what you're doing in the world, anything you want to promote, right? If people have connected to your work, the music, the frequency coaching, one, what can people do? How can they reach out to you? And two, maybe if you want to speak about a lot of the business work that you're doing at the moment and how people can get involved in that.
Is people can go to Bandcamp. It's just band, B-A-N-D, bandcamp.com. And you can type in Listening to Smile and you can find it that way. And we have a wellness series on there where you can buy albums. for personal use at home, and you can just get started using the music and see how it resonates with you. The second point would basically be doing personal frequency coaching, getting some custom tracks. And then on top of that, you're learning about sound healing. You're learning more about how to implement it into your life. You're learning a little bit about finding the balance with the tracks, how long you need to listen to them, what we're going to really target with the frequency. And then the third one would be, as a practitioner, getting involved in the affiliate program. And that affiliate program really gives you the ability to be protected and not get sued. You have a private license with Listening to Smile, and then you can resell the music. You can utilize it on social media, videos, podcasts, all of that stuff. With that, you'll have the proper permissions and license to do that with that program. And then the fourth point of engagement would be the workplace wellness. And so we're working with companies like Cliff Bar that we just signed. We're working with their employees and creating a new company culture, creating more joy, more productivity, more focus for the employees during the workday. So they're able to listen to the music at their desk. They're able to listen to the music at home. They can utilize events where they're being taught guided meditations, and the music is being utilized, and they're doing that in-house, at the place of business. So it's really something that is working on creating movement of stagnant energy, helping to relieve anxiety and stress, and really focusing on productivity, focus, and joy. So those are kind of the four touch points on all that. And then there was something else you wanted me to talk about.
You got it. You got it, okay. My friend. That was the main pieces. And for people listening, I'll put all the details in the show notes to reach out to beautiful Ian and all his work. And I'll just say here, my friend, I said this at the start, but I'm going to reiterate it. I'm so excited for your role in this great awakening that we're all part of. And if this conversation today hasn't highlighted it enough, this is so pivotal in my opinion. And I've just by speaking to you today, listening to your music, I'm already seeing a shift in me. So if it shifts me this much, the people that you're helping, people in need, I'm really grateful that you're in this world, my friend, and doing the soul work that you're doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I want to hear now, my friend, I know that you had a poem that you wanted to share with us, and what I do on the show with light workers and beautiful beings like yourself that are showing up in the world with this kind of love work. I really want to promote a bit of this new kind of frequency that you're emitting. So I'd love to hear, you have a poem that you want to share with us.
So this poem is called, are you still with me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool. So this poem is called The Everything That No One Sees. So it's a heart poem, man, for you. Okay. So it says, if love were, me too. Okay. So the everything that no one sees. If love were a marketplace, then everything I found here in you would be for sale, not front and center or in the shop's window items. What we have here is much deeper and comes from years of searching. We lie on the road less traveled. We come from the hacking away at the overgrown, and we will die far off from the beaten path. I've been burning through these discarded hearts and all these endless winding roads, searching for you this whole time, only I didn't know it. It's the everything that no one sees that gave you away. Once that heart glow of yours was pulled out from its hiding place, every vagrant and thief for miles around stopped in their tracks and are now en route to our position. I feel it's best that we end this poem and softly rest the back cover of this book against these rambunctious words. A stern ending, but with the gentleness of a kiss and a bedtime story. I will come for you in my dreams tonight and from here on out.
Thank you for that poem, Ian. That was beautiful. As I always do with these kind of sharings, close my eyes, open my heart, and receive it. And I was actually got the image of you writing that poem, right? Writing that poem from your heart and adding that frequency into that space. So I love it, my friend. I hope that hit people's hearts tuning in. And I think it's a lovely way to wrap up this show today. I do, Ian, want to ask you one more question here. And it actually flows beautifully off that poem because I can still feel it in the frequency. And I would love to hear, Ian, this is the cosmic love antenna. And for me, the higher power, the connection that we all move through, the layers we're coming back to is love in many ways. So
Yeah.
I'd love to understand your personal definition. How do you define love in your world?
Man, so I think in the past, my definition of love would have just been like this give and take of unconditional love and just acceptance of a person, no matter their state of being or where they're at. But I think like what my definition of love that I'm understanding through this last 2 years, there's been such an unfolding of friendships, like deeper understanding of friends. Some of those people I've known since the 90s. Some of those people are, new acquaintances that have, become, connected on a friend level. Some of it's with family members, and some of it is, with Brittany, with this type of relationship that I've never experienced this type of soul work, on that level. And I think it's really helped me to see new parts of myself. Some of those parts I didn't like, and some of those parts I was like, good job, you did a good job, you got through all this stuff, right? You're still here, right? But I think when I stand back and look, and to answer that question, I think love is a choice. I think it's really easy to be in love when it's easy and you're in that romantic period, or like you're in all the good things of your family or all the good things of your friends. It's like, this is my best friend, blah. But what about when your best friend's doing something you disagree with, or they're having a bad day and they're taking out something on you? It's like, can you still choose love? And I think that understanding of how love is a choice, like the world can be a harsh place, but you choose to be in love and to stay in that vibration. And I think that sometimes being a single mom is a thankless position. Sometimes being a crossing guard at a school is a thankless position. Sometimes being a bus driver or a trash man is a thankless position. There's so many times that I see these people with huge hearts just doing these jobs that are overlooked in the world. And I think they have chose love, And so I think for me, that's the new definition, is that it is a choice.
It's beautiful, my friend. An affirmation, as you were sharing that, an affirmation that I use for myself and people that I get to support and work and guide is, I am all that I am. And that is really what you're encompassing there, right? It's a choice to accept and love not just every other piece outside of me and the people that we interact with, but everything internally, right? And that is really what helps us expand and heal and transform. Ian, I love you very much. Thank you for spending time with me today. Thank you for sharing your heart, your frequency, and all of the beautiful things you're doing in the world. It's been an absolute pleasure. It really has, my friend. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, man.
And for all the people that have tuned in, have given your attention, your time, and your love to the show, we appreciate you. We love you very much. We send you love. We send you light. We wish you a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are out there in the world. Until next time here on the show, we'll see you all very soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to follow Harrison on Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse at Harrison Ma. That's Harrison, Meagher.